How Gen Alpha will change society forever.
Generation Alpha is on track to be the most troubled generation of all time, and it's not even close. This is the era of mindless consumption, extreme polarization, and soulless, meaningless junk food entertainment. From the explosion of mental illness and violent...
I feel like Gen Alpha is going to have the worst attention span ever. No disrespect. Some of y'all, I'm in Gen Z. I would say everybody in this chat is probably in Gen Z or Millennial. Some of y'all have the worst attention spans I have ever seen. Like that that bitch 20 seconds into a video. Like, people can't watch anything for any amount of time without being bored. And Gen Alpha is going to be even worse because they're toddlers holding iPads. Like, we all grew up with technology. I mean, a lot of y'all are like 4 or 5 years younger than me. And so I would say, for the most part, you guys probably grew up with technology even earlier than I did. But I still had, like, a fucking Kindle Fire when I was, like, 7 or something like that. But Gen Alpha now, they're 4-year-olds playing with iPads. Like, that's immediately going to be the worst attention span you've ever seen.
Crime to rampant consumerism and alarmism, our world is slowly degrading. And Gen A has been placed at the forefront of it all. Throw in a worldwide pandemic that shut down the entire globe for months, unhinged inflation, and technology that's becoming progressively more invasive, and you get a recipe that could destroy the minds and lives of millions. This is the generation of your little cousins, your younger siblings, or maybe even your kids. And while it may seem that these characteristics closely resemble those of Gen Z, there's one minor distinction that makes Gen A something that has never been seen in human history. Now, for those of you born anywhere between the 80s and the early 2000s, you might think of your life thus far in two main parts. Life without the internet and life with the internet. You recall...
Dude, I mean, I was born in... Like, do y'all remember the time before technology? Some of y'all don't, right? Some of y'all are probably born in, like, fucking 09. In which case, I would say you probably don't remember shit, right? You just remember technology, because by the time you had a fucking memory, it was already 2013, and YouTube was... and Gangnam Style was a fucking thing. But I was born in 02. So, I remember when, like, my family didn't have cell phones. Or, like, see, here's the biggest thing. My first phone was a flip phone. When I was in middle school, I had a slide phone that I would have to type, like, say I wanted to type text the letter C, I would have to type the number 1 3 times in a row, and it would switch to C. And then if I wanted to type, like, Z, I would have to type number 9, like, 4 times or some shit. And that was, like, let me tell you, the most annoying thing in the fucking world. I remember that. I remember a time without technology. Like, hyper technology. We had technology, but it wasn't like the iPhones we have today. But I feel like some of y'all, especially if you're like 14 now, you're like 13 now, you were born in what, 09? You probably don't remember a time without real technology. Like, you had, like, by the time you were 5, you probably had, like, a Wii and all that shit.
A time when phones were actually used for talking and when computers served as a tool rather than an alternate universe. You probably spent most of your free time outside or with other people. You were fully immersed in tangible reality, and your digital experiences were probably limited to a couple hours a day. Rather than scrolling through 300 different TikToks in an hour, you watched a couple episodes of your favorite show. When you were bored, you were forced to make use of your imagination or just sit there and enjoy the silence.
Nah, but boredom? Oh! Dude, it was like torture. I know this is a first world fucking problem, man. But boredom when you were... dude, in 2012 or some shit when I was 10, being bored was like a death sentence for me. There was nothing to do. And I think back, dude, I asked my mom, like, fucking, like, a couple years back. I was like, what did you do for fun when you were, like, 10? And she said she played with grass clippings. That is... what the fuck? Yo, imagine having zero technology. Other than maybe a TV with 2 channels. Like, that's your parents. Your parents grew up, no technology. They had a box phone, right? One of those phones that you had or a bag phone, where it was like this big. Like, that was their technology. When they wanted to have fun, they had to, like, come up with some shit on the spot. Couldn't Google, couldn't go anywhere. Couldn't text their friends. Oh, fuck that. And then your grandparents, ask your grandparents what life was like when they were a kid. I know grandparents are yappers and they're boring, right? It's so entertaining. Your grandparents are going to go in detail about how they would listen to sporting events on the fucking radio. And they had lamps, like lanterns for light, because your grandparents lived before household electricity. Like, I can't imagine that. That's
silence for a little while. Fast forward to 2023, and your life is probably completely different. You likely spend most of your time on a phone or computer.
What's y'all's screen time? Go on your phone right now, and then go to your, where is it? Yeah, screen time. What is your daily average? My day-to-day average is 5 hours. But I mean, I also, like, have to do social media for a living. Like, I'm on TikTok making videos and shit. 10 hours? No way. 10 hours a day you're on your phone? That's almost the entirety of you being awake. 6? I feel like 4 to 6 isn't bad. 15 hours. Now you're just fucking lying. That means the entirety of the time that you're awake, you're on your phone.
And while that might be problematic, it doesn't change the fact that your developmental years were spent without the presence of this invasive technology. And because of that, you have a firm comprehension of the contrast between the two eras, which allows you to quickly recognize the issues unique to modernity, even if you might fall victim to them sometimes. But what if you didn't have that point of reference? What if you were born in the...
And Gen Alpha doesn't. See, I will say that. You guys still have that. Right, most of us do, but I'm saying even the people that are in chat that are like 13, 14, you still know what life was like in modern, non-modern, non-futuristic society. Because even if you were like 8 in like 2015, it still wasn't really there, right? I feel like 2018 was when like modern society is. Like 2016 was still like, there was YouTube, but it was like Rice Gum and Logan Paul, and like nobody was really on their phone that much. I feel like TikTok killed it, dude. And I have to thank TikTok for like my career. I honestly think though TikTok's really bad for developmental society. Honestly, because short form media is really bad. Like Vine was bad, and then it was nothing. And I honestly believe that time between Vine and TikTok was like the Goldilocks zone, where there was still a lot of technology, but it wasn't bad. Like Musical.ly was still a thing, but nobody fucking used it. It was just like people watched YouTube for fun instead of like scrolling on TikTok for like 10 hours.
Last decade. What if you were thrust right into the most unstable and confusing...
It ruins your attention span.
...era in human history? What would your basis for stability and normality be? This question encapsulates the one-of-a-kind situation faced by Generation Alpha, and no one seems to have an answer to it. In fact, no one has any clue how it's going to play out. And this typical case of generations pointing fingers at each other. This is an era that could see the most profound societal transformation in human history. It begins in the womb, where the development of the hypersensitive fetus is already being impacted by record levels of obesity and unnatural amounts of radiation from digital devices. Upon birth, the kid begins to observe the people around it constantly staring down at their
Does radiation from your phone really fuck up a developing fetus, though?
Phones, which they might come to think of as an instinctual human for all we know. Upon reaching 6 months old, babies already have an understanding of the basics of a touchscreen, with a third of babies under the age of 1 displaying the ability to swipe. If you've been around a
way. Somebody younger than 1 can swipe?
Baby recently, you know that they are completely infatuated with smartphones. They tend to have far more interest in screens than any other toy. And this makes perfect sense considering the fact that the luminescent, interactive world of a phone screen is simply unlike anything else. The lights, sounds, and rapid movements are unbelievably stimulating to a baby's brain. By the age of 5 or 6, most kids already have their own iPads, which renders the rest of their toys completely useless. This is where they first encounter the confusing and detached world of the internet, where they will spend around 6 hours a day scrolling through mindless short-form content.
Ages 18 plus, 11 hours per day average screen time. Wow. No way. Dude, actually, with YouTube, it's like my job, social media. But like with my phone and my computer, I'm on screens like most of my day.
Or watching other people play with toys. And if their parents didn't take the time to enable a child lock, it's likely they'll come across something that even adults find scarring.
What the fuck?
And you obviously can't expect a kid to be able to moderate themselves, which
See,
is
nah,
why
but you know damn well Gen Alpha probably just wheezing at that. Gen Alpha just wheezing at that, bro. Just like snot dripping down their face on their dirty ass iPad. Just fucking
which is why it's the parents' responsibility. But this can be much harder than it sounds. You see, having a smartphone has become standard for children as young as 7. Because of this,
I'm not giving my kid a phone at 7. How old should you give your kid a phone? I had my first phone when I was in 6th grade. I would say 12, you could have a phone, but somewhat monitored. Yeah, I feel like most people around, when they hit middle school, they get a phone. Because that's when you really have friends, you know? Like, you hang out with people. So it's like it's mainly like a communication thing as well, where it's like you're hanging out with your friends on weekends, you're going to their house, you're having sleepovers, you're playing Call of Duty split screen 4 ways, screen peeking, as I was saying earlier, on the PS3, sitting there playing Black Ops 2, literally just staring at my friend's screen.
The entire culture of this generation is dictated by the internet. Everything they talk about or do for fun is sourced from the internet. So the one kid whose parents wouldn't buy them a phone is bound to be an outcast from the 2nd grade.
Dude, same thing with that. That's like the ingenious marketing of iPhones. So serious. iPhones will always be the #1 phone simply because you get flamed if you have green text. That is like a subconscious marketing strategy where like if you have green text messages, you know they won't. Yes, the fuck they will. Because everybody always sways to what the majority has, and the majority will always have an iPhone. Always. Always. Because it's the same thing with consoles. If 4 of your friends get an Xbox, you're getting an Xbox. If 4 of your friends get a PlayStation, you're getting a PlayStation. Regardless of whether or not you think it's the best thing, you're going with the fucking pack mentality, and that's the fucking iPhone.
Their ability to converse, socialize, and play is limited since they don't have access to the digital world that all the other kids are living in. And we know what excessive internet use does to adults, so we can only assume the impact would be much harsher on young children. But we also know how terrible social isolation can be, especially at a young age. So this leaves parents with a hard choice. Either they expose their 7-year-old to the brain rot of the internet, or they shield them from it and inhibit their ability to develop socially. Okay, fast forward to the current day, where the oldest of Gen A is about 13 years old. While many kids at this point will have had some—
Wait, 13-year-olds are Gen Alpha? Nah. Yo, some of y'all are in fucking Gen Alpha. Yo, how does it feel to be in a shitty generation? Addy, I feel like that's not true. I think Gen Alpha's like 10. Gen Alpha start year. 2010. 2010 to 2000. People born in 2010 to 2025 are Gen Alpha. Wow. So probably a few of you guys in this chat are Gen Alpha.
Level of developmental impairment, real damage has yet to be done. Around this age is that many kids start to develop worldviews, opinions, and identities. They begin to comprehend some of the underlying dynamics of society and human nature, and naturally, their curiosity directs them towards the internet. And while the internet can be good for this, it has a far greater potential to ruin it. The internet is filled with useful information and resources, but it's completely smothered by masses of sensationalist garbage that's designed to hijack your emotions and get your click. And we adults fall for this all the time, so why wouldn't young children? The algorithm—
Bro, that and then just misinformation is a massive issue. People just have the capability on social media to just say anything, and then people will just immediately regurgitate that information to other people as if it's a fact. Regardless of what it's about. It could be politics, it could be fucking anything, dude. And people are just like, immediately just, well, no, that's not true.
Isn't going to serve them something educational or appropriate for their age. It's going to serve them a batch of mind-numbing waste. It's going to serve them the same content that everyone else clicked on. And due to the nature of the internet, this is almost always something that's crafted to be as shocking and stimulating as possible. Or in other words, something that doesn't align with reality. And this works a lot like a drug. It's fast-paced, interesting, and gives you full—
What's after Gen Alpha? Nothing. Gen Alpha isn't done. Gen Alpha will continue to be a thing until 2025. After 2025, there will be a new generation. And so if you're like, because there's still people that haven't been born yet that will be in Generation Alpha. It's Gen Beta after that? Yeah, maybe. But I mean, it's that nobody alive today is in Gen Beta. Or whatever as after Gen Alpha.
Full control. As long as you keep swiping, it keeps delivering. It offers everything that reality lacks and more. And since Gen A has been exposed to this world from such a young age, its effects will have a much longer time to incubate, with most of that time being during some of the most important years of mental development. As a result, Gen A will likely see a much bigger spike in mental illness than Gen Z, and at a much younger age. Everything from...
Honestly, though, I think Gen Beta will be fine. I think Gen Alpha is going to have an issue, but I think Gen Z going in... Because you usually have a child 2 generations after you, right? So people that live in Gen Z will usually have a kid that's in Gen Beta or after Gen Alpha, right? So if, like, you're born in Gen Z, you're probably going to have a kid that's after Alpha. And so I think that next generation, like our kids, will be fine. Because I think you're growing, like we're all growing up in this internet society, so we know how to handle it. But people that are Gen Alpha are millennials' kids, and millennials don't know how to raise people in internet society. That's a broad assumption, right? I'm not saying millennials can't raise kids in an internet-based society, but I think we have a better grasp on it because millennials grew up without the technology that we grew up with. And so I think you have a better gauge on how you should raise somebody because you've lived through it, whereas millennials didn't live through the internet while they grew up. Does that make sense?
Depression to anxiety will be more rampant than ever. The less common disorder among Gen Z, known as internet psychosis, will likely become more widespread among Gen A. And everything only gets worse from here. You see, one of the coping mechanisms we have for the illness and emptiness caused by our modern habits is to double down and dive even deeper. And through this, many people actually find an outlet. Enter the toxic wastelands of Twitter and Reddit. Some of the people who need help the most come to these sites in search of an identity and fulfillment. In doing so, they come across a vast array of different political and cultural rabbit
and
holes.
then you join a borderline cult on social media.
Eventually, they find one appealing enough and allow it to completely take control of their identity and personality. And this is what has caused political and cultural discourse to become so diluted and polarizing.
No, you know what? The real reason it fucking sucks is because social media gives people an outlet to only hang around people that they like. And that's the biggest issue. I'm about to spit fucking facts here. Social media encloses you into your own little ass group that you like, and you can just avoid anybody that disagrees with you or has any opinion that you don't like or don't want to be around. And it removes the capability for people to have a discussion with people that they don't get along with. And that further ruins political discourse within the United States as well as the entire world, and only separates people's beliefs more than others because they're incapable of having a conversation with somebody that they don't like. And whenever it's shown even today with some of you guys. I'm not dissing you, right? But I'll have a take politically, and people will have a fucking heart attack. And 14-year-old Twitch chatters will have a heart attack when I say I voted for Joe Biden, right? When I have friends that are conservatives, when I have friends that are liberals, when I have friends that are in the Green Party, when I have friends all over the political spectrum, right? But I'll say something if I say something on social media and somebody disagrees with that take, if it's like a genuine take that's not like about food or something that's fucking idiotic and trivial, if it's like a serious political, religious, or philosophical take, if people disagree with that, they'll hate me, right? Not always, but I'm just saying it's like it removes people from like being able to have a discussion, right? That's why I do philosophy streams. Not only because that's my major and I love talking about that shit, but also because I believe you should be capable of talking to somebody that you disagree with. And if you're incapable of that, you're a fucking idiot. And I know, like, a lot of people are like, I don't want to talk to somebody that has such an insane opinion. I don't want to talk to somebody that believes something that's so against me. And I'm like, yes, right? I understand that. But we live in a society where you have to interact with those people. You're going to have to interact with people that you hate, right? That's life. But social media removes people having to do that, and then they can just huddle themselves in whatever group they want to be in, regardless of what it is. It doesn't even have to be politics. It could be anything. And then now they're only in that group. They only hang out. They only discuss within people in that group. And then everybody else is a fucking outsider and disgusting. And it just ruins society. It ruins society. It's why politics sucks in the US. It's why everybody just can't get along. It's why people have such radical beliefs, because they surround themselves with people that have their own beliefs, and then they just escalate those beliefs more and more, and they don't see the other side ever. And it's so fucking annoying. It's so fucking annoying. That's why I love philosophy, because it gets you to fucking realize people are going to disagree with what the fuck you think. Get the fuck over it. Because you gotta live your life knowing that people are going to have radically different opinions than you. some that you think are fucking dumb as shit and you think they're an idiot because of it, you still have to be able to interact with them, right? Because that person might be your boss, that person might be your coworker, that person might be your fucking family member, right? That person is your family member, right? Your cousin, your uncle, your fucking grandfather, your dad, your mom might have some crazy ass opinion that you disagree with. You have to learn to fucking talk to them. And if you can't, you're part of the reason society is getting worse and worse, right? And it's not just the younger generations. It's everybody. It's the older generations are also doing it too. They're getting in Facebook groups where they only rant about the shit. They only hang out with the people that fucking believe the shit they believe in.
When a person's entire identity is completely reliant on certain ideas or beliefs, a simple questioning of those beliefs is an attack on them as a human being. And this problem will only be worse with Gen A down the line. Gen A doesn't know what the more tame political climate of the past looks like. They weren't around for the time when most people didn't really care or think about politics at all. By 2016, the oldest of Gen A was 6, and they got to witness the unprecedented 2016 election. Everything that has happened since 2016 is the only experience—
And they act like it's a fucking sports team! Oh my god, either side. I'm not even just saying fucking people that like Trump. People that like Trump, Biden, or any fucking political party, bro, they be repping that shit like it's a fucking Eagles team. It ain't football, bitch. It's the fucking person that's running our country. Vote like an actual fucking human. Learn their policies, right? Don't sit there and vote for somebody that you know nothing about.
Or knowledge they have about politics, which will heavily shape how they view it as they mature. And this will have massive implications down the line. Gen A will likely turn out to be even more radical and zealous than Gen Z, and the internet will be their main outlet of expressing it. And those who manage to avoid this trap won't have it much easier. As society becomes more divided and polarized, it becomes harder for those floating in between to find meaning and a sense of community. Because of this, Gen A will also be more nihilistic than Gen Z. And while this is terrible for us, not everyone loses here. Modern corporations stand to profit massively from this. If you take a generation suffering from mental illness, meaninglessness, and the inability to critically think, and you pair it with the fact that it's the largest generation in human history, you get something that corporate America could only dream of. Corporations have already taken note of this with Gen Z, using the masses of data they produce through their excessive social media use in order to make advertising more predatory and mind-reading. And this has worked fantastically for them. But in many ways, Gen Z is simply just a warm-up for Gen A. Since Gen A will spend even more time scrolling, they will produce even more data for corporations, which will then be used to make advertising even more effective. So as Gen A matures and enters the workforce, consumer spending and corporate profits will soar even higher. The mental instability paired with large swaths of data at corporations' disposal will make business easier than ever. As a result, the inflation-induced poverty we see today will only continue to get worse. Consumerism and materialism will be more prevalent than ever, but not in the traditional sense. You see, in the past, these things were exhibited through clothes, cars, houses, and jewelry. But that was back in the 2010s when people valued reality over the digital world. We're talking about 2035, when Gen A—
Oh my god, just more and more fucking crypto bullshit. Virtual reality skins
is in their 20s. While video game cosmetics and virtual reality existed before, they'll be the standard now. People will now pay for virtual clothes, virtual mansions, and virtual—
Dude, GTA 6 is gonna be crazy, bro. The amount of money people are gonna spend, I know it'll be probably the same system, but GTA 6, dude, people are gonna be dropping so much money on that game. Just because when that game comes out, dude, I'm gonna be one of those guys. When that game comes out, I'm immediately dropping an assload of money on it.
Virtual supercars as if they were real, and they will experience it all through a VR headset. And corporations will be happy to deliver, considering the fact that it's not real and costs nothing to produce. People will spend half their day working just to make enough money to sustain their physical bodies and virtual life. And as time goes on, the corporations behind this continue to gain more leverage over the people as they become more dependent on their product. The only thing that will remain unchanged is Western corporations' exploitation of third world labor to produce everything. And it's around this point that a hyper-reality will officially come into existence, alongside the beginning of the end of our species. Now, this is a problem—
Beginning of the end of our species.
That will take another decade to develop, but will require some serious intervention to prevent. And so far, no one is taking it all that seriously, with experts referring to the situation as an unintentional global experiment. We've seen how a lot of this plays out with Gen Z, and it's been nothing short of tragic. Gen Z has declined in almost every measure that matters, and the internet has made us painfully aware of it. To think that this cycle is going to repeat itself with another generation, and that no one is really standing up to it, shows you just how much everyone cares. The reality is that even though younger people are suffering from these problems the most, It's affecting people of all ages, and the entire situation is a catch-22. Our way of dealing with these problems is the same behavior that causes them in the first place. The only real way to end this vicious cycle would be to completely desert many of these modern technologies. But this option wouldn't be without problems either, as a large part of our economy is reliant on this technology. Many of the largest companies in the world are the producers of this technology, and they employ millions of us. So if they go under, so do we. The next 10 years could prove to be some of the most confusing and problematic years in human history. And while we can make a rough guess as to how things will play out, there's really no limit to what could happen.
Wow. Dude, that was a fire video. I ranted about that bitch for like fucking 40 minutes.